Okay. So this is going to be about discussions about art as it relates to Gynarchy. In other words, how should we go about? Actually, it might be a better title for this. I haven't made it up entirely because I do these off the cuff. How should we go about promoting Gynarchy through art? I think that might be the better question for this video, and I'm gonna explain why. So when somebody says to me, we need to promote it through art, I'm going to have to ask you to be very specific about what it is that you're doing. Because there are two kinds of Gynarchy artwork, in my opinion, whether it's visual, in text, digital, however you're representing the art piece. There is fetishistic Gynarchy, and then there is non-fetishistic Gynarchy. So my personal opinion is, if you're going to market either of these things, first of all, we have had fetishistic Gynarchy content for years on multiple platforms in multiple mediums. And I don't necessarily think that that's unhelpful. Because we've seen the results. I found, I came across erotic fiction, and it had a very strong influence on me. It set me down the path of a gynarchist. It happened. It was a thing. So obviously it can work. But the thing is, there's a lot of this content out. If, for example, if you go on X or Twitter, there's tons of this artwork for days. The same thing when you go to DeviantArt or Tumblr or Rule 34 or pretty much any website, YouTube included, has this content, this fetishized content related to Gynarchy. And I think that and at least as far as this is concerned, I don't know if somebody wants to approach me and say we need to make more of this fetishized artwork. I mean, this is not just you, Religion Made Simple. At least it's not just you. George from X, the one I made in a video response about whether Gynarchy can come from democracy. He also felt that we needed more artwork. Now, the problem, of course, I have is, how much are you talking about? Like, I have a background in mathematics and physical science. I think about things in concrete terms. I am a literalist, so if you approach me with a question like that, my first instinct is my first instinct is to try to define its parameters. I can't help it. I'm not doing it to insult anybody. It's just the way my brain works. I will literally look at a statement like that and go, okay, how much? How much artwork do we make? Because there are literally hundreds of thousands of these photos. There are dozens of manga about, in fact, if you look at Japan has been going headfirst with matriarchal content for the past decade. Like, they are not playing anymore. They are basically putting it up front. There have been at least two of them about matriarchies that I know about. At least two. If I kept digging, I could probably find more. In fact, in Yu Yu Hakusho, there was a matriarchal society. In fact, Hiei, one of the main characters, came from a matriarchal society. He was born into one. So this isn't new. This is not a new concept. We know about this stuff, and Japan has been doing it for years. But it's been doing it in a way that is very clever. In other words, when Togashi was doing it, he did it on the tail end of his series. See, his series was already ending, so you notice how he didn't do that at the beginning of Yu Yu Hakusho. See, this is what's important to remember about promoting artwork, is that, first of all, and this is to Religion Made Simple, before we get into how we should promote this artwork, whether it's fetishistic or non-fetishistic, we have to first address another like kind of elephant in the room here, which is which artists should we be encouraging to promote this content, or should we just be doing this ourselves? Because not all of us have the same reach. And with Togashi, he literally waited until near the end of his story to do this shit. That's what's interesting about it. We, as especially if you watch the anime, I would never have guessed that he would have included a matriarchal society after the Sensui arc, after the Black chapter arc. I never would have guessed that shit. But because it was so close to the end, sometimes artists will make calculations based on not only the money that they're making, but on what kind of risks they're allowed to take. Because sometimes they do have to anticipate backlash. They have to think about their career in the future. And so if you're going to introduce content like this, when is it appropriate? Should you be doing it from the onset? Should you be doing it in the middle of your story, towards the end of the story? And I think in Togashi's case, because he was writing for the shonen genre, I don't think that he wanted to include matriarchal content at the beginning, because he was marketing something that is violent and destructive. You know, the shonen genre is inherently violent and destructive. It's about characters beating the shit out of other characters over ideological differences or differences of opinion or experience or whatever. So him being able to fit a matriarchal society into a genre like that for its time in the 90s was a shock. And it still surprises me that he managed to pull that off and not lose his reputation as an artist. I don't know if it's because the society of Japan is more accepting of promoting matriarchal societies and ideas or depicting them than, say, we are in the West. What I do know is that as an artist, he made the decision to do that at the end of his career, at the end or near the end of Yu Yu Hakusho. He made that choice. He took that risk. So if we're talking about introducing Gynarchy, whether it's serious or non-serious, into our artwork, the question is, when is it if you are writing something that is not specifically about that, when is it appropriate to take the risk? When should you be taking the risk? Or should you take the risk from the very beginning? Because there is the reality, and it is true, that some people will not read this content unless it's put into another genre or into another story with something else that they like. In other words, I feel like one of the keys to introducing this content and to helping to normalize this is you kind of have to, in a way, you have to introduce success through some kind of other, why did that appear? It's like Facebook posts are weird. Anyways, I'm trying to explain it. It's hard, but it's kind of like this. So if you are going to do this, it's almost as if you have to establish the success from a different genre at first, so that because people, if they really like your stuff, they appreciate it, and they develop a relationship with the artist based on the previous content, that they will be more receptive towards just watching it. They might not necessarily like the content, but because the author wrote something else that they like, it makes them a little bit more receptive towards finishing it. And I think that tactic or strategy towards creating Gynarchic artwork is important, because in recent years, some of these mangaka and animators are getting way, way, way more bold and upfront about showing femdom content, about depicting matriarchal societies. This is something that back in the day in the 90s, they couldn't do, but you always get the feeling that individuals like Togashi paved the way for it, where he gave you little snippets of it, of what it could be like, and why they would form that society, what their reasoning was. And then you fast forward to the current day, where we're seeing way more of this content and we're starting to see people drifting towards it, starting to center uh, women and girls as having the power and the authority. And I do think that if you're going to have a discussion about artwork, aside from quantity, which is important, like how much are we talking about? Because if we're talking about fetishistic content, then obviously there's so much of it. I don't understand how having even 500 or 1,000 more of it are going to make that much of a difference. I honestly do not see it. Maybe I'm wrong. You can call me out on that. I just don't see it. But if you're talking about non-fetishistic Gynarchy content for artwork, then I am absolutely on board with you. Religion Made Simple, and I'm willing to collaborate is and brainstorm ideas. We just need some fucking writers. I could do the writing, but I am far better at just drawing what I see. That is where my strength is. I am not. I would not consider myself a strong writer in any sense of that word. So if we're talking about the quantity of non-fetishized gynarchic artworks, then I am absolutely on board with it. However, I would stipulate this. I think that you need to show different kinds of perspectives. I think that part of artwork is you're evolving someone's understanding of it as they're consuming it. And so if you're going to evolve someone's understanding of what you're writing, I think that what's necessary is that the perspective, whatever it is you're forwarding, needs to be ironed out. So, in other words, what kind of Gynarchy are we talking about? Are we talking about something vicious? Are we talking about something normal? Are we talking about something everyday? Whatever. And are we going to talk about this in a serious way or a non-serious way? Now, one thing I've actually thought about doing is I've thought about writing manga about Gynarchic societies from a more serious perspective. In other words, the ideological justification, the backgrounds for it, where it's coming from, and to approach it from a more serious lens. Obviously, including certain kinds of content that would be considered very controversial. Like for example, a daughter or a girl getting into it out of anger or upset, and of course, because there would be some kind of tragedy done to the character. But I also think that if you're going to do artwork as well, aside from perspective, it has to be kind of new in some way, fresh, something that we haven't seen before or done in whatever way. And if you're going to be competing with Japan in that way, because Japan already comes out with some pretty weird shit. Like there's that manga about these girls who eat like peaches or fruits or something, and then they get like super powerful, and only girls can have these fruits. That is just fascinating. That's a fun concept. Again, they have some great ideas over there. But here in if we're in the West, what exactly are we doing? Like, what do you mean by what are we going to, how is this, what does that entail exactly? So the next thing is, aside from the fact that I'm on board with needing more of this quantity, what does this quantity entail exactly? Like, if we're being serious about it, are we going to talk about the rise? Like, are we going to like have some kind of video, sorry, well, not video, but some kind of art about the rise of a Gynarchic community? Or are we going to have some kind of underground revolution thing going on? Or is it just going to, or how is it, like, in other words, how is this, are we going to talk about the development of something? Or are we going to show how that something is? Because I've had an idea in mind for years about a Gynarchist who's struggling to seek out a Gynarchist and just making that a manga. Like, literally, just sharing all the problems, going through the journey. I feel like that manga would be great. Just talking about all the struggles that Gynarchists go through to find other authentic Gynarchists. I think that would be a great manga idea. And that's kind of what I mean by, like, what are you talking about? Are you talking about, is it the journey towards that we want to market? Is it already being there? Or is there's like, where exactly, what kind of art as it relates to Gynarchy you're talking about? Until I know what kind it is, I don't know what my level of investment is going to be in creating it. because I want to create something I can personally connect to.